During Christmas dinner, my grandfather Arthur slid 3 crisp white envelopes across the mirror sheen of the dining table. "A small holiday token for each of you," he murmured, his voice a low rumble. My parents exchanged a look and immediately erupted in polite, staged laughter. My mother, Eleanor, rolled her eyes, her smile stretched thin. "Oh, Arthur, are we playing the pretend money game again this year? It's so charming." My father, Richard, chuckled, swirling the deep red wine in his glass. "The man has a sense of humor. Just go with it, Amy." I didn't join in. My gaze met my grandfather's, and he looked profoundly weary. I simply said, "Thank you, Grandpa," and slipped the envelope into my coat pocket. My parents were already back to discussing their new luxury sedan. They believed it was just another of his quirks, a harmless prank from an old man. They were completely oblivious. I was too, in a way. But the following morning I walked to my bank. A strange guilt gnawed at me, as if I were about to be caught in a foolish act. I passed the check to the bank teller. She was silent for what felt like an eternity. Then she glanced up, her expression all professional composure. "Your deposit has been processed, Ms. Evans." And with those 6 words, the joke was over. It had never been a joke at all. Before we get into the details, do me a quick favor and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from around the globe. My name is Amelia Evans, but everyone calls me Amy. I'm 32. To make any sense of what happened with that check, you have to understand my family, especially my parents, Richard and Eleanor Evans. You have to understand the world they built, the house I was raised in. My parents valued one thing above all else: the appearance of perfection. Their entire existence was a carefully curated performance. We lived in a sprawling, architecturally impressive house in a neighborhood filled with other sprawling, impressive houses. The lawns were manicured to an impossible green. The cars were always the latest models. My mother, Eleanor, had chosen our specific house for its grand, sweeping staircase. "It makes a statement," she'd say. "It sets the tone." The interior was just as grand and just as cold. We had a formal living room where no actual living was permitted. The carpet was a pristine, unforgiving white. The sofas were also white, upholstered in a designer fabric that felt more like stiff canvas than anything meant for comfort. My mother had picked them from a high-end design magazine. "Isn't it just so elegant, Amelia?" she would ask, and I would always just nod. I once, at the age of 8, spilled a single, tiny drop of water on one of those white sofas. The way my mother shrieked, you'd think I had committed arson. She spent the next hour furiously scrubbing the spot, her face a mask of tight-lipped fury. "This is precisely why we can't have nice things," she muttered. Her eyes locked on me. I never set foot in that room by myself again. My childhood felt like a series of meticulously staged photo shoots. My mother was obsessed with capturing our family's image. Every holiday, every vacation, we were forced to pose, to look blissful, to look flawless. I vividly remember one Christmas photo when I was 12. My mother had purchased us all matching garish red sweaters. They were horribly itchy. I was scowling. Amelia, smile. My father, Richard, barked from his position by the fireplace, where he was practicing his own version of a relaxed, casual smile. "It's itchy," I complained. "Stop it," my mother hissed, her voice a low, sharp warning. She gripped my shoulders, physically turning me to face the camera. "Your father and I work incredibly hard to provide this life for you. The very least you can do is appear grateful for a single photograph. Now smile." So I smiled. It was a strained, fake smile that didn't reach my sad eyes. My mother adored that picture. She said we looked like a family from a catalog. She had it framed and placed it on the grand piano. Hard work was their mantra. "We've worked so hard for this life," they'd declare at their frequent parties. My parents loved hosting parties, filling their perfect home with other perfect people. The house would buzz with loud, insincere laughter and the cloying scent of designer perfume mingling with pricey Chardonnay. My role at these events was to be the perfect, silent daughter. I'd wear a dress my mother selected, smile at the adults, and offer to take their coats. Then, at the first opportunity, I'd escape to my room with a book. Once, a woman I didn't know came upstairs looking for the bathroom and found me on my bed reading. She smiled. "Hiding out?" I just nodded. She glanced around my room, the only space in the house that looked genuinely lived in, with its band posters and cluttered desk. "Your parents are a handful," she said, before laughing with a hint of embarrassment. "I'm Mrs. Gable." Later, I overheard my mother talking to her near the staircase. "Oh, Amelia is just terribly shy," my mother explained in her bright, airy party voice. "She's going through an awkward phase. We're just hoping she'll outgrow it." I wasn't shy. I just despised their friends, the noise, the sheer phoniness of it all. The truth was, my parents' hard work was a complete fabrication. The perfect house, the new cars, the parties, the white sofas, it all flowed from a single source: my grandfather, Arthur Evans. Grandpa Arthur was the antithesis of my parents. He was a self-made man who had started a logistics company with a single used truck and a dusty warehouse. He'd built it into one of the largest and most respected shipping firms in the region. He was old money wealthy, the kind of man who still shined his own shoes and got ink on his fingers from the morning paper. My dad worked at the company. His title was Vice President of Business Development, but I had helped Grandpa with office filing one summer and saw the real ledgers. My dad's development consisted mainly of golf outings and extravagant client lunches. Grandpa's company paid for my parents' mortgage. It paid for their cars. It paid for the pristine white carpets. My parents adored Grandpa's money, but they were deeply embarrassed by him. He was too authentic, too direct. He wore suits that were a decade out of style and drank his coffee black from a thermos. I remember one party where a man was boasting to my father about his stock portfolio. Grandpa Arthur walked over. "You don't play the market, Arthur?" the man asked with a laugh. "No," Grandpa said, his voice deep and unwavering. "I invest in diesel, in steel, in people who show up for their shifts on time, things you can put your hands on." The man looked bewildered. My father's face flushed crimson. He quickly steered the conversation away. More wine, anyone. Later that night, I heard my parents arguing in their bedroom. "He humiliated me, Eleanor," my father seethed, talking about diesel and steel like some common dock worker. "I know, Richard, I know," my mother soothed, her voice laced with fatigue. "He just doesn't get it. He's from another era. They loved to show him off as a prop, as proof of their pedigree. My father, the man who built this city's trade routes. My dad would boom, draping an arm around Grandpa's shoulders for a photo op. But they never respected his values. They never truly listened to him. To them, he was their private ATM, an old and slightly eccentric machine that would without fail dispense cash. They never once considered that the bank might one day close. In my parents' eyes, I was a failure, their greatest disappointment. They never said it so bluntly, of course. They were far too polished for that. Instead, they used coded language. Amelia is just finding herself. She's the creative one. She's squandering her potential. That last one was their favorite, wasting my potential. My parents' definition of a successful life was incredibly narrow. It involved a large house in their zip code, a real profession like a doctor or a lawyer, or a vice president of business development. It meant marrying someone who also had a real job and a large house. I had none of those things. I lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Seattle. It was cozy, the floorboards creaked, and the kitchen was barely a kitchenette. My parents detested it. "It's so compact," my mother said on her first and only visit, eyeing my worn, comfortable sofa as if it were carrying a disease. "And this neighborhood, Amelia. Do you actually feel safe here?" "I love it, Mom," I told her, and I meant it. My apartment was mine. The walls were a warm, buttery yellow, covered in my design sketches and prints from local artists. My bookshelves were overflowing. It was a space designed for living, not for display. It was messy. It was comfortable. It was real. My career was the other major issue. I was a freelance graphic designer. A decorator? My father had asked when I first told him. "A designer, Dad. I help businesses and individuals create a visual identity." "There's no future in choosing fonts, Amy," he'd scoffed, shaking his head. "It's a hobby. You've wasted a college education on a hobby. You should have gone to law school." I almost did go to law school. They pushed so hard. "A law degree is so respectable," my mother would say. "Think of the potential." I was utterly miserable. I remember crying one night while trying to study for the entrance exam when Grandpa Arthur called. "You sound awful," he said gruffly. "I'm fine, Grandpa." "No, you're not. You sound like you're gargling gravel." "What's the matter?" So I told him everything. I told him I didn't want to be a lawyer. I told him I wanted to create things, to work with color and form and typography, to help small businesses tell their story. He was quiet for a long moment. I was sure he was disappointed too. "All right," he finally said, "come over on Saturday. Wear clothes you can get dirty." When I arrived at his house, he didn't lead me into the living room. He took me to his workshop in the garage, a huge, dusty space that smelled of sawdust and machine oil. He pointed to a pile of old lumber in the corner. "I need a new bookshelf for my study," he said. "Let's build one." We spent the entire weekend in that garage. He didn't just tell me what to do. He taught me. He taught me how to measure and cut, about the different types of wood, the direction of the grain, the importance of strong joints. "It's not about the fancy finish, Amy," he said, running his calloused hand over a piece of smoothly sanded pine. "The finish is the last, easy part. It's about the bones, the structure. If the joints are weak, the whole thing will collapse. Doesn't matter how pretty it looks." My hands were sore and blistered. I had sawdust in my hair. I had never felt happier. By the end of the weekend, we had a simple, beautiful, and incredibly sturdy bookshelf. "That's real work, Amy," he said, placing a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Honest work. Don't you ever let anyone convince you otherwise." I still have that bookshelf. It's in my small Seattle apartment, holding my favorite books. It's the most precious thing I own. Grandpa Arthur was the only one in the family who got it. He was the only one who understood. He was the only one who ever asked about my projects, not my income. He'd call me up. "What problem are you solving today, Amy?" I'd tell him about a small coffee shop with no budget for a logo or a new band needing a poster. "And what did you do?" he'd ask. I'd describe my ideas. "I'm creating a logo that uses the shape of a coffee bean in a clever way, and I'm using a warm color palette to make it feel inviting." "Good," he would grunt. "Smart, honest. That's my girl." He was the only one who truly saw me. My parents saw my wasted potential. Grandpa saw my work. He had a saying I heard him use often, usually after witnessing some act of arrogance or phoniness. He'd watch someone be flashy or rude, his eyes sharp. Then he'd look at me and say, "Money doesn't test character, Amy. Gratitude does." I didn't fully grasp what he meant back then. I thought it was just one of his grandfatherly aphorisms. "What do you mean, Grandpa?" I asked him once. We were in a diner, and he had just left a 50% tip for the waitress, who looked utterly exhausted. "You watch how people treat the ones they don't think they need," he said, sipping his black coffee. "You watch how they say thank you. You watch to see if they mean it. A person can have all the money in the world, but if they lack gratitude, they're broke. They're just an empty room." I nodded, thinking I understood. I didn't. Not really. I never realized that all those years, he wasn't just teaching me. He was observing me, and he was observing my parents. He always said, "Money doesn't test character. Gratitude does." I just never imagined that our Christmas dinner, that was the final exam. The room was filled with the scents of pine and roasted lamb. It was Christmas dinner at my parents' house, naturally. My mother had been orchestrating the menu for weeks. The table was a picture of perfection, a long, dark mahogany table polished to a mirror sheen, set with her finest china, edged in delicate gold leaf. The crystal goblets caught the candlelight, scattering tiny rainbows across the stark white walls. The centerpiece was a monstrous arrangement of pine boughs, silver baubles, and holly berries, so large I could barely see my father across from me. The air was thick with tension. Christmas with my parents was never joyful. It was a performance. My mother, Eleanor, wore a crimson silk dress. Her hair was perfectly coiffed, but her smile was brittle. She was on edge. "Richard, do you think the lamb is overdone?" she whispered to my dad. "It's fine, Eleanor." "Everything is fine," he replied, though his attention was elsewhere, his thumb covertly scrolling on his phone beneath the table, probably checking his stock portfolio. "I just want everything to be perfect for your father," she said. Grandpa Arthur sat at the head of the table, looking diminished in the enormous high-backed chair. He wore an old, dark green wool sweater. It was clean but well worn, and I could see my mother's gaze flickering toward it, her expression betraying her thought that it was unsuitable for her perfect Christmas tablescape. I was just trying to remain invisible, sipping my water in a simple black dress, counting the minutes until I could retreat to my quiet little apartment. The conversation, as always, orbited around my parents. "Our trip to Gstaad was simply divine," my mother announced to Grandpa. "We're considering buying a small chalet there." "Oh," Grandpa said, his lamb untouched. "You have a house here?" "Oh, Dad," my mother laughed, that high-pitched artificial laugh. "It's an investment. Richard is so shrewd with his investments." "Is that so, Richard?" Grandpa asked, his gaze shifting. "The market is exceptionally robust, Arthur," my dad said, puffing out his chest. "You have to know when to make your move." I watched Grandpa. He simply nodded slowly and took a bite of lamb. He chewed thoughtfully. He looked tired. After the main course, my mother cleared the plates and presented a ridiculously fancy dessert involving chocolate spheres and edible gold leaf. Then, Grandpa Arthur cleared his throat. It was a quiet sound, but in that cavernous, silent room, it resonated like a drumbeat. "I have something for you," he said. My parents paused, looking at him. He reached into his coat pocket and produced 3 plain, white, business-sized envelopes. He slid one across the table to my dad, one to my mom, and one down the long table to me. "A small holiday token for each of you," he said again, his voice soft. My parents looked at each other, and then they laughed. My mother laughed first, her tinkling party laugh. "Oh, Arthur," she said, picking up the envelope but not opening it. "Still playing Santa Claus, are you?" This is so sweet. She fanned herself with the envelope. What is it this year? A check for 1,000,000 I love yous? My dad, Richard, chuckled with a smirk. He picked up his envelope and tapped it against the table. The man has a sense of humor, he said, glancing at me. Just go with it, Amy. He gets a kick out of it. He didn't open his either, just set it beside his wine glass as if it were a coaster. I didn't laugh. I looked at Grandpa, and he was looking at me. His eyes. I will never forget his eyes in that moment. They weren't twinkling with holiday cheer. They were sad, a deep, profound sadness. He looked utterly drained. He watched my mother mock his gift. He watched my father dismiss it. Then his gaze found mine. I picked up my envelope. "Thank you, Grandpa," I said, my voice barely a whisper. He held my gaze and gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. And just before he looked away, he said something so quietly that my parents, already resuming their chatter, didn't hear. "Keep it safe." My heart gave a strange, tight lurch. Keep it safe. What did that mean? I held the envelope in my lap. It felt strangely heavy, important. My mother had already forgotten about hers, placing it on the sideboard next to a stack of used dessert plates, already chattering about her New Year's Eve party plans. My dad had slipped his into his suit jacket pocket absent-mindedly, like one might pocket a business card destined for the trash. The joke was over. The performance went on. I slipped my envelope into my own coat pocket, my hand closing around it. I didn't understand what was happening, not yet. But I knew, deep in my bones, that something had just fractured. Sitting there at that perfect polished table, I felt the crack in the foundation. When I left, I hugged Grandpa goodbye. His embrace was stronger than usual, holding on for an extra second. "Drive carefully, Amy," he said into my hair. "I will, Grandpa. I love you. I love you too, child," he whispered back. "You're a good girl. You're real." My parents waved from their perfectly lit doorway, the light from their crystal chandelier spilling onto the flawless lawn. "Merry Christmas," my mother called. "Don't forget to call your aunt." They were already closing the door, already moving on. I sat in my cold car for a long minute, my hand in my pocket, clutching that white envelope. It didn't feel like a joke. The drive back to my apartment in Seattle was silent. The city streets were mostly deserted, Christmas lights blurring into streaks of red, green, and blue past my windows. The heater in my old car was on the fritz, so a chill had settled deep in my bones. I drove with one hand on the steering wheel, the other buried in my coat pocket, my fingers tracing the outline of the envelope. "Keep it safe." His words echoed in my mind. So sweet. My mother's laugh. The man has a sense of humor. My father's smirk. A cold, heavy anger began to curdle in my stomach. They didn't even open them. They didn't even look. They had laughed in his face at his gift. When I got to my building, I bolted up the stairs, desperate to be in my own sanctuary. I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, breathing hard. My apartment was wonderfully messy and warm. I clicked on a single small lamp, shedding a soft glow. I tossed my coat onto my worn-out sofa and went to make a cup of tea, my hands shaking slightly. I sat on the floor, my back against the couch, and stared at the envelope on my coffee table. It was just a plain white business envelope. My name, Amelia Evans, was written on the front in his strong, familiar script. I hesitated for a long time. A part of me was terrified to open it. What if it was a joke? What if it was a novelty check for 1,000,000 hugs? After all this drama, all this heavy feeling, I would feel like an absolute fool. But what if it was real? I picked it up, sliding my finger carefully under the flap, not wanting to tear it. I pulled out the single folded paper inside. It was a check, a real cashier's check from his personal bank. My eyes jumped to the pay to the order of line, Amelia Evans. Then my gaze dropped to the little box where the numbers were written. My breath caught in my throat. 150,000. 150 with 3 zeros. $150,000. I read it again and again. The signature at the bottom was his, Arthur Evans. It was real. I just sat there on my floor in my tiny apartment and stared. My chest felt tight, constricted. I think I was supposed to be ecstatic, jumping for joy. I'm rich, right? But I felt none of that. I felt an incredible, crushing weight. This wasn't a gift. This was a declaration. This was a test. And my parents had failed spectacularly. He had given them the same envelope, the same opportunity, and they had laughed. They had tossed it on the sideboard with the dirty dishes. He knew. He must have known they would. And he had given one to me, too. And I had said, "Thank you." This wasn't a test of me. It was a test of them. He was just showing me the results. A sudden hot wave of respect for my grandfather washed over me, so sharp it almost hurt. He was smarter than all of them combined. He was stronger. And I felt a deep, chilling sadness for my parents. They were so blind, so lost in their world of white carpets and potential that they couldn't recognize something real when it was placed directly in their hands. I didn't know what to do with the check. Cashing it felt wrong. It felt like it was about the money, and this wasn't about money. It was about something much bigger. I got up and walked to my desk. On my desk sits a small, dark wood box with a smooth lid. It holds the bookshelf plans I drew with Grandpa in his workshop. I keep my real treasures in it. I opened the lid, and the scent of cedar and old paper filled the air. Inside, there isn't much. A photo of him and me, covered in sawdust, grinning at the camera. A letter from my best friend Maya that says, "You are brave." A small pressed flower from the first bouquet a happy client ever sent me. Things that mattered. I took the check, folded it once, and placed it inside the box, right on top of the photo. I closed the lid. It felt right. It was safe. It was where it belonged. It was a symbol of respect. It was proof that he saw me. I didn't sleep at all that night. My mind was racing. What was I supposed to do? The next morning, I woke up feeling as if I had a hangover. I made coffee and stared at the wooden box. $150,000. It was a life-altering sum. It would wipe out my student loans. It would allow me to rent a proper design studio. It would give me security. Then, a small, ugly thought slithered into my mind. What if my parents were right? What if this was all a game, and this was the real test? What if he was waiting to see what I would do? If I cashed it immediately, would that make me greedy? Would I be just as bad as them? But if I didn't cash it, was I disrespecting his gift? Was I being a fool? I was completely tangled in a web of confusion, like a character in a fable tasked with solving a riddle. I had to know. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about knowing for certain if any of this was real, or if I was losing my mind. My curiosity got the better of me, but it was more than that. It was a desperate need for truth. I told myself I wasn't really cashing it. I was just verifying. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, my hands trembling so much I could barely type my password. I took the check out of the box, feeling a pang of betrayal, like I was cheapening it. I laid it flat on the table. Mobile deposit. I took a picture of the front. My shaking hands made it blurry. I took it again. I took a picture of the back. For mobile deposit only. The app's little wheel spun for a moment. Deposit submitted for $150,000. I felt sick to my stomach. I put the check back in the wooden box and closed the lid. I felt small and grubby. I felt like I had taken this beautiful, heavy symbol of respect and tried to turn it into mere cash. I felt like my parents. The next few hours were pure torture. I sat on my sofa staring at my phone. I tried to work, but I couldn't focus. Every buzz and notification made me jump. I was waiting for the deposit failed email, the insufficient funds notice, the just kidding text from Grandpa. I was waiting for a sign, any sign, to tell me what was real. The word submitted just hung there on my phone screen. I put the phone face down on the coffee table. I felt dirty. I felt cheap. What had I done? I went to the kitchen and scrubbed my hands, but the feeling wouldn't wash away. I paced my small apartment for what felt like an eternity. I told myself it would be rejected. The bank would send a deposit failed email, and then I would know it was all a game, and I would put the check back in its box and never look at it again. That would be the end. I was almost hoping it would fail. My phone remained silent. The silence was deafening. After another hour, I couldn't stand it anymore. I picked up the phone. My banking app was still open. I refreshed the page. My heart didn't just stop. It felt like it was seized in a fist and squeezed. The pending status was gone. The check was listed under completed transactions. And my account balance, the number at the top of the screen, it had changed. I was staring at a number with 5 zeros after it. It was real. The deposit hadn't failed. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a game. It was real. "Your deposit has cleared" weren't just words in a story. The number was glowing on my screen. It was just digits on a display, but it felt like a mountain had just materialized in my living room. My hands shook so violently, I dropped my phone onto the couch. It was real. I sat down hard, putting my head in my hands. I wasn't happy. I was terrified. Because if my check was real, it meant their checks were real too. And they had laughed. They had left them on the table like trash. Oh God, I had no idea what to do. Should I call them? "Mom, Dad, that check you made fun of?" It was real. Should I call Grandpa? "Grandpa, why did you do this?" I did nothing. I just sat there frozen, the number on my phone screen feeling like it was burning a hole in my world. I sat there for 10 minutes, maybe an hour, I don't know. Then my phone rang. The screen lit up. Mom. My blood turned to ice. This was it. The other shoe was dropping. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. I wiped my sweaty palm on my jeans and answered. "Hello?" My voice was a faint whisper. "Amelia, why didn't you answer?" Her voice was high-strung and tight. It didn't sound like my mother. It sounded sharp. "I was in the bathroom, Mom. What's up?" "What's up? What's up?" she repeated, her voice incredulous. "I'll tell you what's up. I have just had the most mortifying experience of my entire life." I remained silent. "Your father and I were just, tidying up from Christmas. And I found that envelope your grandfather gave me. The ones he gave your father, too. We were having a laugh about it." Her voice was trembling. She was trying to sound casual, but it was a dismal failure. We thought, oh, what the heck, let's see what the joke is. So, I called the bank, just to inquire. And the manager? The manager said the checks had been stopped. He said your grandfather placed a stop payment on them yesterday morning. She was speaking so fast she was gasping for air. "He humiliated me, Amelia. He let us. How could he?" I still said nothing. What could I possibly say? "Did you speak to your grandfather today?" she asked, her voice suddenly turning cold and suspicious. "No. Why?" "Don't lie to me, Amelia." "I'm not lying, Mom." There was a long, frigid silence on the line. I could hear her sharp, shallow breaths. The bank manager, she said, her voice now dangerously low, mentioned that one check did clear, a large one. This morning. She paused. Ours were stopped, but yours went through. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. He's playing favorites again, she shrieked, the sudden volume making me flinch. It was a sound I hadn't heard in years, the sound from my childhood, the sound of spilled water on the white sofa. It was raw, ugly jealousy. After everything we do for him, we host him, we take care of him, we manage his life. And you show up twice a year and he gives you— What did he give you, Amelia? Mom, How much? She demanded. I couldn't tell her. I wouldn't. This is ridiculous, she snapped. I'm putting your father on. I heard fumbling, my dad's angry, muffled voice. Just give me the phone, Eleanor. Amelia? He barked. Hi, Dad. Don't hi, Dad me. Your mother is hysterical. You should have told us. Told you what? I whispered. That you knew. That you knew the check was real. You went behind our backs. You cashed it, didn't you? Scurried off to the bank first thing in the morning like a little thief. I didn't. He's old, Amy. My father's tone shifted, attempting to sound reasonable, paternal. The voice he used to handle a problem. He's old, and he's not thinking clearly. He doesn't know what he's doing. I thought of Grandpa's eyes, clear, sad, and steady. He's playing games, and you fell for it. And you've created a massive problem for this family. I didn't create anything, I said, my voice suddenly finding a cold clarity. Listen to me, Amelia. That money is not yours. It's family money. Your grandfather is confused. You need to come here, and we are going to sort this out. We will put the money into a joint account. We will manage it for you. It's the only fair thing to do. You don't understand finances. You'll just waste it on your hobby. It's not a hobby, I said. This is not up for debate, he shouted. You have put this family in a terrible position. You should have told us. You laughed at it, I said, the words finally breaking free. You didn't even open it. You called it a joke. A long, terrible silence stretched across the line. I had spoken the one truth they couldn't argue away. My father's voice, when it returned, was flat and cold, colder than I had ever heard it. He's an old, senile man, Amelia, and you are a very, very foolish girl. He hung up. I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear, the dial tone buzzing. He's old. He doesn't know what he's doing. I looked at the number in my bank account. I looked at the wooden box on my desk, the one containing the plans I had drawn with him. Money doesn't test character. Gratitude does. My parents were wrong. I knew with a sudden, dreadful clarity that my grandfather knew exactly what he was doing. The following 2 days were the longest of my life. I felt like a ghost in my own apartment. I didn't answer my phone. I didn't check my email. My parents called again, and again, and again. Their names would flash on the screen. Mom, Dad. And I would just watch my stomach twist into a knot until the call went to voicemail. They left messages. My mother's were first, tearful and pleading. Amelia, darling, please call me. We're just worried about you. Your father was upset. He didn't mean those things. We just want to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. My fathers were different. They were curt and furious. Amelia, stop this childish behavior. Call me now. Then the text began. We know you're there. This is irresponsible. You are tearing this family apart. Me, I was the one tearing the family apart. Not their greed, not their mockery. Me. I turned my phone off. The silence was a relief, but it was also worse. The $150,000 sat in my checking account like an unexploded bomb. I was terrified to touch it, terrified even to look at it. I bought groceries with my credit card because I didn't want to use the money. It didn't feel like mine. It felt like evidence in a trial. I couldn't work. I sat at my design table and stared at a blank screen, my hands still shaking. The colors all looked wrong. Everything felt gray. I was alone. I was rich, I supposed, and I had never felt more alone in my life. On the second day, I couldn't bear it any longer. I turned my phone back on, ignoring the dozen new notifications from my parents. I called the only person I could, Maya, Amy. Oh my God, are you alive? I was about to file a missing persons report, Maya Chen, my best friend since college. She was my polar opposite, loud, hilarious, and utterly fearless. She was a lawyer, a real one, as my father would say, who worked for a legal aid society helping people who couldn't afford representation. My parents loathed her. They said she was aggressive and a bad influence. I'm not okay, Maya, I whispered, feeling the tears I'd been holding back finally start to well up. Where are you? I'm coming over. No, I need to get out of here. Can I meet you? We met at our favorite diner, an old school place that smelled of coffee and bacon. I huddled in a booth in the back, my hands wrapped around a mug of hot tea. Maya slid in across from me, her sharp, intelligent eyes scanning my face. Okay, she said, all business. You look like you've been through a war. Spit it out. So I told her everything. The dinner, the laughter, the pretend check, my parents' disdain, my grandfather's sad eyes, his quiet words, keep it safe. Maya just listened, her expression growing tighter and tighter. Then I told her about the next morning, the deposit, the number. Maya's eyes went wide. $150,000, Amy? Shh, I said, looking around. Holy crap, she whispered. Then I told her about the phone calls, my mother's mortifying experience, the stopped checks, my father's foolish girl. When I finished, I was crying, quiet, exhausted tears rolling down my cheeks. Maya was silent, staring into her coffee cup. Maya? She looked up, and her face wasn't sad. It was furious. Maya, don't. I'm going to kill them, she said, her voice a low growl. I am. I'm a lawyer. I can find a way to make it look like an accident. You are tearing this family apart? They are not a family, Amy. They're a corporation, and you just messed with their annual revenue. It's not funny, Maya. I'm not laughing, she said, her voice softening slightly. I am incandescent with rage. They have treated you like this your entire life, like you're the broken, weird one just because you have integrity. And now your grandpa finally calls them on their crap. He finally shows you what you're worth, and they call you a thief? For being grateful? I don't know what to do, I whispered. I'm so scared. Scared of what? Them? Amy, they can't do anything. It's your name on the check. It's in your account. It is your money. Game over. It's not about the money, I said a little too loudly. It's him. It's Grandpa. What did I just do? Did I get him into trouble? Is he okay? What if my dad is right? What if he's not? Well? Maya's face softened completely. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Her hand was warm and strong. Amy, look at me. Your grandfather is a genius. He is the smartest person in this entire saga. He's not old and confused. He's strategic. He knew exactly what they would do. He's been watching them for years. He's been watching you. This wasn't a gift of money, Amy. It was a gift of truth. I took a shaky breath. So what do I do now? Nothing, she said firmly. You live your life. You pay off your loans. You rent that studio you've been dreaming about. You use the money. That is the greatest thank you you could possibly give him. And you block your parents' numbers. I can't do that. Okay, fine, she sighed. Baby steps. Just wait for their next move. I drove home feeling not better exactly, but stronger. Maya had injected some steel into my spine. He's a genius. It was a gift of truth. I got to my apartment building and checked my mailbox on autopilot, and there it was, not a business envelope. This one was made of thick, heavy, cream-colored cardstock. My name, Amelia, was written on the front in my grandfather's handwriting, that strong, clear, old-fashioned script. My heart leaped back into my throat. This was it. I went upstairs, my keys trembling in my hand. I sat on my sofa and tore it open. There was no letter, no explanation, just a single card, as thick as the envelope itself. It was printed, not handwritten. Dinner, Saturday, 7 p.m. Underneath was the address of his house, not my parents' house, his, that was all. My blood ran cold. This was the next move. This was the showdown. I called Maya. He invited me to dinner, I said, Saturday. Okay, she said, her voice cautious. Just you? I think so. It just has the time and place. So what do you think? Maya asked, her lawyerly tone returning. You think he's going to confront them? Is he going to have them there? Is this an ambush? I looked at the simple, elegant card. Dinner, Saturday, 7 p.m. I thought about the stopped checks. I thought about the $150,000 in my bank account. I thought about the decades of watching, listening, and testing. A calm, cold, sad certainty settled over me. No, Maya, I said quietly, staring at the card. I don't think he's about to confront them. Then what? I think he already did, I said. I think the test is over. This is him announcing the results. The drive to my grandfather's house on Saturday night was the loneliest I've ever taken. My little car felt inadequate on the wide, dark roads of his neighborhood. My parents lived in a flashy, new-money enclave. Grandpa lived in the old, established, wealthy part of town. His house wasn't a modern box of glass and white stucco like my parents'. It was a 30-year-old brick manor, solid, timeless, and real, set back from the road behind enormous old oak trees. I parked my car behind a line of much more expensive vehicles. I recognized my parents' silver Mercedes. My stomach plummeted. They were here. This wasn't just an announcement of results. This felt like an execution, and I had no idea if I was the guest of honor or the main course. I walked to the front door, my heart hammering in my ears. I seriously considered turning around, getting back in my car, and driving back to Seattle, never speaking to any of them again. But then I thought of Grandpa, his sad eyes. Keep it safe. I had to see this through. I rang the bell. The door opened almost immediately. It wasn't Grandpa. It was his housekeeper, Maria, who had worked for him for as long as I could remember. She gave me a warm, genuine smile. Amelia, he is waiting for you in the study. Are my parents here? I whispered. Maria's smile vanished. They are in the dining room, she said, and her tone told me everything I needed to know. She led me down the hall. My parents' house was all white walls and harsh, bright lights. Grandpa's house was warm, the walls lined with bookshelves, the dark wood floors covered in beautiful old rugs. It smelled of old books, wood polish, and the faint, sweet aroma of his pipe tobacco. It smelled like a true home. She opened the doors to his study. Grandpa Arthur was sitting behind his massive dark wood desk. He wasn't working. He was just sitting there, his hands folded, waiting. "Hello, Amelia," he said, his voice calm. "Grandpa," I replied. I wanted to run to him, to cry, to ask a million questions, but I just stood there, frozen. "You look nervous," he observed. "I am." "Don't be," he said simply. "You've done nothing wrong. Sit down." I sat in the large leather chair across from his desk. He looked at me, his eyes clear and sharp. "You received my invitation." I nodded. "They're here, aren't they?" "Yes," he said, "they are." "Now, before we go in there, I want you to understand something. What happens in that room tonight has nothing to do with you. It is not your fault, and it is not your problem. This is between me and them. It has been for 30 years. Your only job tonight is to be quiet and to be real. Can you do that? Be real? Just be yourself, Amy. That's all you've ever been. It's all I've ever asked." He stood up. He was an old man, but he stood straight and tall, radiating power. He was wearing a dark suit, not his usual old sweater. "Let's go to dinner," he said. He placed a hand on the small of my back, and we walked out of the study and down the hall to the dining room. I felt like I was walking into a nightmare. My parents were standing stiffly by the fireplace. They weren't speaking to each other. My mother, Eleanor, was wearing a black dress that was far too expensive. Her smile stretched so taut it looked painful. Her eyes were red-rimmed. My father, Richard, stood with his hands shoved in his pockets, staring into the unlit hearth, his face a dark, blotchy red with suppressed rage. They both turned as we entered. My mother's eyes flew to me, her smile wobbling. "Amelia, you came." She looked at Grandpa. "Dad, this is quite a surprise." "Is it?" Grandpa said calmly. He walked to the head of the table. "Please sit." My parents sat on one side, and I sat on the other, alone. Grandpa remained standing at the head of the table. He wasn't holding a serving platter. He was holding a thin manila folder. He set it down on the table in front of him. The soft thud echoed in the dead silence. "You'll each find documents in here that pertain to you," he said, not looking at the folder, but directly at my parents. My mother's composure shattered. She burst into tears, not sad tears, but angry, frustrated ones. "You humiliated us, Dad," she cried, her voice rising. "You stopped our checks. You made us look like fools, after all we've done for you." "What have you done for me, Eleanor?" Grandpa asked. His voice was still quiet, still calm, and it cut through her sobs like a razor. She stopped, sputtering. I did stop the checks," Grandpa said, nodding calmly. "I did." He looked from my mother to my father. "For 30 years, I have given you everything. A house, cars, a job you don't perform. An allowance for a woman your age. I have given, and you have taken. And not once have you said thank you and meant it." "That's not true," my father blustered. Grandpa continued as if he hadn't spoken. "At Christmas, I gave you one final gift, a simple test. I gave you the exact same thing I gave Amelia." Both my parents glared at me, my mother's look pure venom. "I gave you a check, a real one, a gift. And you laughed. You laughed at me. You threw it on the sideboard with the garbage. You rolled your eyes, Eleanor. You smirked, Richard. You called me a joke." His voice was so calm, and that's what made it so terrifying. He wasn't yelling. He was simply stating facts. "You laughed at a gift. So, you laughed at me." "It was a test," my father shouted, slamming his fist on the table. The crystal glasses rattled. "A sick, twisted old man's game." "Life is a test, Richard," Grandpa replied. "You failed." "And her?" my father bellowed, pointing a trembling finger at me. The vein in his forehead was a pulsing purple cord. "You rewarded her." "For what? For doing nothing? For being a failure? For squandering her potential? She's done nothing." The room was silent. I could feel all their eyes on me. I felt small, like I was 12 years old again in that itchy red sweater. I looked at my grandfather. He was still looking at my dad. "She did everything," Grandpa said, his voice so quiet, so full of power, it brought tears to my eyes. "She listened. When I spoke, she listened. When I taught her, she learned, she works, she builds, she respects herself. She said thank you for a gift she didn't even know was real. He turned his clear, steady eyes on me. She didn't laugh. The silence that followed was sacred. That's the only word for it. It was the sound of a 30-year-long lie finally dying. It was the sound of truth filling a room. My father's face was ashen. My mother was completely, utterly silent, her mouth agape. They had nothing left to say. He had taken all their words away. My grandfather, Arthur Evans, did not move. He stood at the head of his table, a king in his own home. My father's fist was still clenched on the tabletop. My mother's face was pale and blotchy. Grandpa picked up the thin manila folder. He opened it and slid it across the polished wood table. It stopped directly in front of me. "This is yours, Amelia," he said. I looked down, my hand still in my lap, afraid to touch it. My father leaned forward, squinting. "What is that? What is this? More games?" I placed my hands on the folder and opened it. It was not a check. It was pages and pages of legal documents. My eyes scanned the text, not comprehending all the jargon. I saw the phrases, "Last Will and Testament of Arthur Evans." I saw durable power of attorney. I saw transfer of deed. I saw articles of incorporation for Evans Logistics. And on every single page, in the spaces for executor, beneficiary, or trustee, I saw my name, Amelia Evans. My breath left my body. This wasn't the $150,000. This was everything: the company, the house, the trust. "What is that?" my mother whispered. She looked sick. "What is that, Amelia?" she asked again, her voice rising with hysteria. I couldn't speak. I just looked at my grandfather. "It's my estate, Eleanor," Grandpa said calmly. "It's my legacy." You can't do that," my mother stammered. "You can't. Richard is your son. He's the vice president. It's his." "Richard has a title," Grandpa said evenly. "He does not have the job. He has never done the job. He has a salary which I have paid." "You can't do this!" my father roared, standing up so violently his chair scraped against the wood floor. "I am your son. She's a child. She doesn't know anything. She knows how to work," Grandpa said. "She knows how to listen. She knows how to build. This is illegal," my father yelled. "You're old. You're senile. She tricked you, manipulated you." He was looking around the room, desperate, as if searching for an ally. "You're not well, Dad. You're sick. You need help. We're going to get you help." My mother latched onto this new strategy. "Yes, Dad, you're not thinking clearly. This test, it's not normal. We're worried about you." They were trying to strip him of his power, to declare him incompetent. I watched, horrified, as they tried to turn this on him. Grandpa just watched them. He let them talk. He let my father rant. He let my mother cry her fake, worried tears. He let the silence stretch out after they had exhausted all their ugly, desperate words. My father was breathing heavily. His suit jacket bunched at his shoulders. My mother was dabbing her eyes with a napkin, her face a mask of false concern. Grandpa waited. Then he spoke, and his voice was not that of a senile old man. It was the voice of the man who built a company from a single truck. It was steel. "I am not sick, Richard. I am not confused, Eleanor. I have never in my life seen things more clearly." He looked at my father, then at my mother. "I already have," he said. My mother looked bewildered. Have what?" "You said I can't do this," Grandpa clarified. "I'm telling you, I already have. The papers are signed. They are filed. My lawyer, Mr. Miller, has the originals. These are your copies. It is done." My father's face, it collapsed. The anger, The bluster, it all just drained away. He looked old. He looked weak. He looked like an empty room. He sank back into his chair. My father tried to speak. He opened his mouth, and a small sound came out, a pathetic but... Grandpa's voice cut through the air. It wasn't loud. It was final. He looked at his son. He looked at his daughter-in-law. Good. Now I know who's real. That was it. That one sentence. It was 6 words, but it was the end. It ended everything false in that room. It ended 30 years of lies. It ended the perfect image. It ended the hard work. It ended them. My mother stood up, her movements stiff and robotic. She picked up her purse. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at Grandpa. She just walked to the door. My father sat there for another second. He looked at the folder in front of me. He looked at his father. His eyes were filled with something I had never seen there before. It wasn't anger. It was pure, cold, empty hate. Then he stood up, straightened his suit jacket, and followed his wife out of the room. We just sat there. We heard the front door open. We heard it slam shut. The sound echoed through the big, quiet, solid house, and then there was peace. We sat in the silence. I was still staring at the open folder. Executor, trustee, Amelia Evans. My hands were shaking. I was rich. I was in charge of everything. I looked at my grandfather. He was still standing, but he looked tired now. He looked old, but he looked free. He let out a long, slow breath that sounded like it had been held in for 30 years. "Well," he said, his voice soft now, "I suppose Maria has kept dinner warm." He sat down. He picked up the small silver bell by his plate and rang it. I just stared at him. "Grandpa," I whispered, my voice breaking. I can't." "Can't what?" he asked gently. "I don't know how to do this. The company, the trust. I'm a designer. I choose color palettes. I don't know how to run a logistics company." Maria came in, pushing a serving cart. She didn't look surprised that my parents were gone. She just began setting out plates of roasted chicken, vegetables, and warm bread. Grandpa looked at me and smiled, a real warm smile. "I taught you how to build a bookshelf, didn't I?" "Yes, but..." "You started with a pile of wood. You measured, you cut, you learned the joints, you learned the bones. It's the same thing, Amy, just a bigger table." He placed a piece of chicken on my plate. "We'll hire people to do the parts you don't know. You just be the boss. You just be real. You'll be fine. You're the only one I trust to be." We ate dinner, just the two of us, at that long, polished table. We didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about my parents. We didn't talk about the folder, which I had closed and placed on the chair beside me. He asked me about my work. "Tell me about that project you were working on," he said. "The one for the new family in the small apartment? The nursery?" "That's the one." And so I told him. I told him how I had designed a custom crib with storage drawers underneath. I told him about the soft yellow paint I'd found that made the tiny room feel sunny and expansive. He listened. He nodded. "Smart," he said. "Good bones." We talked about spring planting. He wanted to put in new rose bushes along the front walk. I told him which colors I thought would look best. We just talked, like we always had. After dinner, we had coffee in the study. Before I left, he walked me to the door. "I'm scared, Grandpa," I said quietly. "I know," he said. He put his heavy, warm hand on my shoulder. "That's how I know you're the right one. The ones who aren't scared, they're the problem." He reached into his pocket and handed me a small folded piece of paper. Not a check, just a note. "Read this later," he said. He hugged me. "Drive safe, Amy." I drove home in a numb daze, feeling like I was floating. I got to my apartment, sat on my sofa, and opened the note. His handwriting. "Money changes hands every day. Respect is earned only once. I cried. I finally cried. Not for my parents, not for the money. I cried for him. For his long, lonely life, watching his family curdle into something fake. I cried because he saw me. A week later, I sat in a large, polished office. The sign on the door read, Miller, Grant, and Associates. Grant Miller was a kind man with gentle eyes behind his glasses who looked a little like my grandfather. Your grandfather is a very, very smart man, Amelia, he said as I signed my name, page after page. He's placed a great deal of trust in you. I know, I said. My hand was steady now. The numbers didn't matter. The money was just a tool. It was a result. The lesson was what mattered. I'm still a designer. I have a studio now, a nice one. I hire other young designers and I pay them well. I'm also the head of Evans Logistics. I sit at a big table in a boardroom. I listen, I learn, I make decisions. It's just a bigger table. I never heard from my parents directly. Their lawyers sent letters, of course. They tried to contest the will, claiming Grandpa was senile and under undue influence. But Grandpa was smart. He had been documenting his clear state of mind for years, letters from doctors, video-recorded statements. The case was thrown out. They lost. They lost everything because they had already lost long before. They thought the check was fake, but the only fake thing in that house on Christmas night was their love. I still drive past that first bank sometimes, the one where I made the deposit. I remember the feeling, the shaking hands, the sick dread. And I remember the call that changed everything. It wasn't a call from the bank telling me the money was real. It was the call from my father telling me I was a foolish girl. That was the moment I knew he was wrong, the moment I knew my grandfather was right, the moment I finally understood my own worth. And that decency, quiet, simple, and real, was worth more than any dollar amount.